Hey, what's up, guys? Pete Alonso here from the New York Mets, and I'm here with Alfred. And I just want to say thank you so much to all you guys for listening to the Metropolitan Report. It's a really awesome show. You got some great insight on Mets baseball, and yeah, it's a great place where Mets baseball is talked about, and we got a lot of really fun stuff coming up this year. And a lot of really great things coming from this team in the clubhouse, and I'm really excited to keep the ball rolling. And it's been such a fun season, and I'm really thankful for everybody coming out to the ballpark and supporting us, and it's just been absolutely tremendous. So thank everybody for listening to the Metropolitan Report, and Alfred, keep doing your thing, and as always, LFGM.
Hey everybody, it's Alfred Parsar Jr. back with another edition of the Metropolitan Report, and we're going to continue our coverage of 2025 Mets spring training this season. Several things to talk about, and first we got to start with some bad news, unfortunately, but the injury bug continues to plague the Mets. This time, catcher Francisco Alvarez is going to be out of action 6 to 8 weeks. His hamate bone in his left wrist is fractured, so he won't be able to participate in games again. He had surgery. Francisco Alvarez, of course, the promising young Mets catcher who everybody is waiting on to break out. He's shown flashes of power since he's been in the major leagues. But again, Francisco Alvarez out 6 to 8 weeks. Fortunately, it's in his receiving hand and not his throwing hand, so it's in his catching hand. But again, he's going to have surgery on his fractured left hamate bone in his wrist. He's going to be gone to 6 to 8 weeks. So what does this mean for the Mets and who's going to be back the backstop? Well, one thing I can tell you, Luis Torrens, the Mets backup catcher, he has been having a very good spring. Luis Torrens, very solid at the plate. Torrens played in Flushing last season, had a cup of coffee with the Mets, 49 games, and hit for a 229 average last season, 3 home runs, 15 RBIs. And he'll have an extended role, 6 to 8 weeks. That's going to bring Alvarez back around maybe May. So at some point in May, so Luis Torrens will be the full-time catcher until that happens, I would presume. Uh, Again, Luis Torrens, so far this spring, having a decent showing, batting 263. He's been getting a lot of work in spring, more work than Francisco Alvarez. He's got 19 at bats so far this spring. He's hitting 263 with 2 RBIs. Lifetime Torrens, a 227 hitter. More known for his defense than his offense, but again, Torrens is having a solid camp. Now, if you're the Mets, obviously you cannot go into the season with just one catcher because Torrens may need an off day here or there. But definitely now, Torrens already was going to get the backup job. I did not see anybody beating out Torrens for the backup job. But again, Alvarez, this is not going to be out for the season type of injury whatsoever. As of right now on the roster, the Mets only have two catchers, Alvarez and Torrens. It remains to be seen who's going to be the backup catcher in this situation because the Mets have already cut 15 players from big league camp. The only other catcher they had in camp was Kevin Parada, the prospect. He got reassigned to minor league camp, but I'm not worried about Francisco Alvarez whatsoever. Alvarez is young. This injury is on the same hand that he had the fractured thumb last year, again in his catching hand. So I'm not worried at all. Not worried. I have no. The Mets will be okay without Alvarez. The Mets will be missing Alvarez until mid-May. Again, not the end of the world. And I think Torrens is a very capable backup where he can fill in until Alvarez comes back. Torrens will be fine for a month and a half while Alvarez recovers from the surgery. So I'm not worried at all. Moving on. Clay Holmes. Let's talk about Clay Holmes, ladies and gentlemen. Clay Holmes. When the Mets signed Clay Holmes, I was very, very skeptical about that signing. When they announced that they were going to make him a starter, again, I was very, very skeptical about the signing. Of course, for those of you who don't know, Clay Holmes, former closer for the Yankees, last season, he was known as Cardiac Clay, was a guy who you put him into a game with a 3-run lead to come in and close out in the top of the ninth or the bottom of the ninth. And if the Yankees won the game and he got the save, the 3-run lead may have shortened to one before he got the save. Or he blew 13 saves last season and lost the closer role. So I was very skeptical. And anytime you get a reliever who wants to become a starter, several questions arise. Number one, relief guys, closers, setup men, when they make the transition to starter, how will they fare? Number one, they got to throw more pitches because as a reliever, you it's very rare you see a reliever in for more than one inning, maybe two max. Now you got a guy, he's expected to give you at least 5 to 6 minimum. Then you got to wonder how many pitches is he going to throw? Will he tire out easily? We've seen successful relievers become successful starters in recent times. Again, Michael King, the former Yankee, went to the Padres, became a solid starter. Seth Lugo, the former Met, uh, was a setup man here, goes to Kansas City, becomes a starter, has a great season, great couple of seasons. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen with Clay Holmes, but Clay Holmes looks like he belongs in the rotation. So far in spring training, Clay Holmes has had 3 starts. Now, of course, these are not 5 to 6 inning starts, but in 3 games pitched, he's pitched in 9 2/3 innings. That's roughly that's 9 2/3 innings. That he's faced 29 batters, one batter short of going 10 innings and 3 starts. He has no ERA, none. And Holmes is looking very, very good. In 29 batters faced, he struck out 13 of them. And again, no ERA, has not allowed a run all spring. For a guy who had concerns about blowing saves, not being able to handle high leverage situations. And again, this is spring. He's facing some minor leaguers. He's facing non-roster invitees who are fighting to make the team. But Clay Holmes is looking really sharp. Dare I say, this might be his midseason form he's in right now. Clay Holmes striking guys out at a high rate, very efficient. I realize that Clay Holmes also during the spring has a very efficient pitch usage. He's not throwing a large amount of pitches to get out of innings, so that's a plus. Again, Clay Holmes, the former Yankee closer, adapting well, it seems, to his role in the spring as a starter. And initially, I've got to admit, I was skeptical, but I'm starting to come around on Clay Holmes and him being in the rotation. I have no issue with Clay Holmes whatsoever. He's exceeded my expectations this spring. I thought that maybe he might have got batted around so far this spring, but he has not. But speaking of guys who have been getting batted around this spring, and a guy who on our last edition of the report I said I did not want to see him in the rotation, Paul Blackburn, ladies and gentlemen. Another horrid start. Blackburn, again, this past Friday in a game against the Washington Nationals in the spring, Blackburn pitched 2 1/3 innings, gave up 3 runs on 5 hits, and he gave up 2 homers. Also walked 2, and again, struck out not a single player. I understand Paul Blackburn is coming back from injury. I understand that he was not healthy dating back to last season. I understand he has no minor league options. So it's either cut bait with him, stick him in the minors, But once you bring him up, you can't put him back once the season starts, or leave him on the roster. But Paul Blackburn should not be starting the season as a Met. He can start the season as a Met. He can start the season as a Syracuse Met, but he should not start the season as a New York Met. Paul Blackburn so far this spring. And again, I understand coming off an injury, but in a team, on a team with the expectations of winning, the Mets are expected to be a contender. The Mets are not some team in rebuilding like the Nationals or the Rockies. The Mets are not a team that's projected to be a first round exit in the wild card round. The Mets potentially are projected to win the National League East. I think we will win the National League East, but we'll save that prediction for the end of spring training. But on a team that's expected to go very far, I don't think that there's any room to have a player who's rehabbing on the job. You want to rehab? That's what Syracuse is for. That's what Binghamton is for. No on the job rehabbing in Flushing. This spring, Blackburn, 3 starts, 4 2/3 innings. No wins and a loss, but that's neither here nor there. It's spring training. ERA of 11.57 and has only struck out 1. He doesn't look like he's major league ready, and he's walked 4. 4 walks to 1 strikeout, 11.57 ERA. And here we are, and I know everybody's been, Alfred, you can't be so tough on him. He had a spinal leak he's coming back from. I understand that. And because of the severity of the injury, mind you, he was injury riddled last season. So this is 2 straight seasons we're dealing with Blackburn being hurt. And correct me if I'm wrong, despite him being an all-star in 2022, like, it's just, and we acquired him mid-season last season. He's just not. He just doesn't have it right now. I don't see it from him. And it's ironic because last season the Mets traded for him mid-season, and he had better numbers in Oakland than he did in the Mets. And Oakland was a dumpster fire. The Athletics are still a dumpster fire, but this is not a show about the Athletics. But it's just, we have Griffin Canning, we have Tyler McGill. Those 2 guys are healthy. They should be in the rotation with Montas and Manaea hurt, not Blackburn. I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy. Paul Blackburn should not be on the Major League roster come opening day. I don't care that he doesn't have options and McGill and Canning do. That I could care less. You have to put the best roster together that gives you the best chance to win. And right now, I don't see Paul Blackburn giving us the best chance to win games over Griffin Canning or Tyler McGill. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like, what are we doing here? You want the guy to rehab and get reps and get healthy? He can do it in Syracuse. Have him spend the first couple of months in Syracuse and let him get his feet back under him, let him work on his mechanics, and then maybe in July or August call him up if he does well in Syracuse. But this guy, the Paul Blackburn that was an all-star in 2022, he's gone. He's long gone. I'm sorry. He's gone. I just don't see it. I don't see it whatsoever. Blackburn, just let him start the season in Syracuse. Because I listen, and everybody who's here watching, By the way, subscribe and to get new notifications on this video and all videos going forward. But I will make one separate show. If Paul Blackburn makes the major league roster and he starts dazzling, I will dedicate one whole episode to how I was wrong about Paul Blackburn being on this roster. But I'm going to stand by it. I don't think he should be in Syracuse. And then you got the manager Mendoza, Carlos Mendoza, pleased with his spring so far. I'm supposed to be pleased with the guy of 11.57 ERA. If this was the major league regular season, the fans in Flushing would have his head on a stick marching down Roosevelt Avenue. I don't want to see Paul Blackburn in the majors to start the season for us. I absolutely do not. Nope. Now you want to talk about his opposition, Griffin Canning, who had his spring training debut, pitched in one game. He didn't start, but he pitched an inning and 2/3. This was against the Astros, February 27th. Gave up 2 hits, struck out 2, walked 1. But again, for a guy who is prone to giving up home runs, I mean, granted, he's only had 1 appearance all of spring training. But in the small sample size that we saw Canning, his 1 start alone has looked better than Paul Blackburn. Give the nod to Griffin Canning. Give the nod to Tyler McGill. And put them with Peterson, Holmes, and Senga. That should be the starting 5 for us going into the year. Not Paul Blackburn. And I know people are going to say I'm bashing this guy. I'm not. I'm just looking at numbers. I'm looking at performance. Blackburn, you go watch highlights from his starts, or lowlights as they are, because there's nothing good there. He doesn't look comfortable on the mound. But neither here nor there. The last topic before we get out of here, folks, Brandon Nimmo. On the last report, we acknowledged that Brandon Nimmo was having some knee issues. That's why he had been held out of spring training up until this point. Well, he was supposed to play a couple days after we released our report last week. And Brandon Nimmo once again being pushed back. He's having trouble with his right knee. According to Nimmo himself, he's 85% healthy. He recently received a gel injection, according to Carlos Mendoza. He's only had 2 plate appearances all spring before he got pulled. And now there's uncertainty around Nimmo's opening day status. Carlos Mendoza was quoted as saying, "We're still shooting for opening day." He feels that there's enough time. Mendoza thinks that he can get Nimmo some quality at bats before spring is up. For a guy to first say, and for the team to say, that the injury was minor. Early on, they said the injury was minor. And they said, oh, he'll be okay. Give him a couple days. He'll be back in spring action in no time. And now here we are almost a whole week later, and we still haven't seen Brandon Nimmo. Now, I get it. These games in spring, very meaningless. Anything that happens in the Grapefruit League has no bearing or no effect on anything between the end of March all the way to October. I get that. The games are meaningless, but they do provide warm-up reps. They do provide guys chances to work on techniques in situations that don't really mean anything. These games don't count. So when is the best time to work on stuff? When they don't count, so that you can apply it to the games that do count. But I don't know, there may be some concern here because, again, the Mets are very deep in the outfield in camp. Of course, Juan Soto, everybody knows. Juan Soto, uh, he's going to man right field. Then, of course, there's Jose Siri, Tyrone Taylor, Jesse Winker, Starling Marte, who's working his way back, Alexander Canario, Jose Azocar. So the Mets, if Nimmo can't make the opening day roster, there are a slew of guys who can replace him. I'm not worried about that. But what I am worried about is that we have a guy who we paid handsomely in the offseason. And he was supposed to return almost a week ago. We were guaranteed his return almost a week ago. And now they're pushing him back even more. And now there are reports of treatment. I'm seriously concerned if Nimmo will be on the opening day roster. And really, how bad is the knee injury? The Mets are not being very forthcoming with news about his injury status. Little by little, we learn more information. Now we know he's at 85%. That's the number they gave us. Now we know he's received injections. But I don't know if I feel, because today is Monday, March 10th. Opening day is 2 weeks from 2.5 weeks from now. 2.5 weeks. The Mets open the season in Houston on March 27th. So 2 weeks from this Thursday, the season starts. Will Brandon Nimmo be on the active roster? I'm hoping so. But how much preparation can you do at the major league level in 2.5 weeks? If Nimmo doesn't return in the spring by the end of this week, I will be very, 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 that's 3 or 4 verys. I wasn't counting, but very concerned. But that's neither here nor there. But Brandon Nimmo, I don't want to rush to judgment and rush to hit the panic button, but I'm very concerned as of right now. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up here. And if you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button down below. Get a notification every time a new report comes out or any type of content on this channel comes out if you like what you see. Also, if you think I'm wrong about Paul Blackburn or my analysis of Brandon Nimmo's injury is not good, you can also chime in the comments below. Until then, I'll see you on the next report.